Hi everybody, welcome to Gossip Finance. I'm Duncan Sandlin, hosting you today. I'm on my own, so bear with me on everything. But I just wanted to touch real quick on the Biden impeachment that's been going on. It looks like it's winding down. There was nothing to it after all. Big shocker. The Republicans held, the Democrats held a hearing this week, and it did not go well for the Republicans. First off, their main witness was an FBI informant who recently got arrested. He's in prison right now. For lying to the FBI about this whole thing, and he was taking sources from the Russians and Russian intelligence. It also turns out that he was paid a mysterious amount of money by some of Trump's buddies out of Europe, who also are funded by guys in the United Arab Emirates, right? So kind of an interesting thing with that. So they had their one witness left. And it's this guy named Bablinski. And Bablinski, his whole claim to fame is he worked with Hunter Biden briefly in like 2017. And his claim is that in 2017, while he was working for Biden, Biden took some money or something as a bribe, which is stupid. First of all, one, there's no evidence that any of this happened. It's just his word against nothing, right? I mean, there's nothing there. So none of this has been confirmed. He's just saying that that's what happened. Now, maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I don't think so. You have to confirm it, though. I mean, otherwise it's just hearsay. Anyways, so, because he heard maybe Hunter say something that maybe alluded to it. That's kind of his evidence. On top of that fact, it happened in 2017 when Joe Biden wasn't the president or the vice president. He wasn't even in office. Donald Trump was the president. So it's all kind of bullshit. So there really isn't a crime here, if anything, right? So we're going to look at him first because he kind of came in and it was just kind of embarrassing. He just kept saying over and over that Biden was guilty, but he couldn't say why or how he knew. So we'll jump into that real quick.
Should I allow Hunter to give his opening statement first?
Doesn't appear Mr. Biden showed up for his public hearing, so we'll recognize you, Mr. Bablinski.
You're presented here today with two narratives in this investigation. A false one being pushed by Joe Biden, a serial liar and fabulous, now under this impeachment investigation for public corruption, and his son Hunter Biden, a chronic drug addict facing 2 indictments with 12 counts.
Even if we were to believe every single word offered by these utterly compromised and biased witnesses, Mr. Bablinski, Mr. Galanis, their allegations don't identify any wrongdoing, much less an impeachable offense by President Biden.
Rep. Dan Goldman and
Jamie Raskin's right. There's nothing there. I mean, he didn't have anything, and he hasn't been deemed credible. In fact, Forbes did an article here. We'll look into it in a second. And basically, in the Forbes article, here we go. Moving to that. Biden impeachment hearing turns fiery, is the ex-business partner. So the business partner here, Hunter Biden's ex-business partner, Tony Bablinski, a primary witness in the GOP-led impeachment probe into President Joe Biden, accused Democrats of lying to the media in explosive House Oversight Committee hearing Wednesday, widely viewed as a last-ditch effort. In the inquiries, Republicans have begun to acknowledge it appears to be coming to a close. So there's not much left in this. This is kind of the end of it. Let's just sort of sum it up here. But here, this is the big one. Bablinski's claims have never been verified. And multiple other witnesses have told the committee that the president was not involved in his son's business ventures. So, all of it, once again, Jamie Raskin kind of put the point home there, which is none of this has been verified. He's not a reliable source. And the other witness, that's his corroborating witness, is in prison for lying to the FBI about this. So there's nothing really there with Bablinski, but I mean, it goes on. We'll watch a little bit more because it's kind of crazy how this whole thing panned out with this guy.
and Jamie Raskin, both lawyers, will continue to lie today in this hearing and then go straight to the media to tell more lies. Hunter Biden's defense attorney, Abby Lowell, weaponizes letters to Congress to try to smear my name.
Mr. Chairman.
I apologize for the disruption.
Am I supposed to say it's my time, Mr. Raskin?
Yeah, state your parliamentary inquiry because we've got a very important hearing here and we don't have time for stunts.
It's not a stunt. It's I'm simply asking that Mr. Bablinski.
You don't have a parliamentary inquiry. Chair now recognizes Mr. Parnas.
Once again, we're back to a hearing where no evidence is being provided of any sort of wrongdoing by the president. But I want to go back,
that's a
Mr.
blatant
Bobulinski.
lie.
Actually, it's my time, sir.
I want to remind people he's sitting in prison. That's why he can't be here today. He's sitting in prison for scamming workers' pensions.
What
He's talking about one of the other witnesses.
is the crime, sir? Specifically.
You asked me to answer the question. I answered the question.
No.
RICO, you're obviously not familiar with. Corruption
Excuse me,
statute.
sir. Excuse me,
Mara.
sir. Excuse me, sir. RICO is not a crime. It is a category.
She's technically wrong. RICO is a crime. The problem is RICO's conspiracy, so there has to be an underlying crime that you're conspiring to commit. Well, that's what I think she meant. RICO is a crime. But that's the point, is what's the underlying crime here? And there isn't one. That's the point. And so the whole thing was just a big joke overall. And I wanted to get to this because the Democrats pulled up Lev Parnas, who was the guy, if you don't remember, he looks like a James Bond villain. And he was the guy that Rudy Giuliani hired, and he met with Trump, and Trump was appraised of all this, to try and dig up this dirt on Joe Biden, which started this whole thing way back when in 2019. And Lev Parnas testified, but Fox News cut away from his testimony. And we're going to go to this because Luke Beasley covers this, and he does a great job. If you guys haven't checked out Luke Beasley before, he's fantastic. But anyway, let's look at Luke, because he's going to talk about at the point where Fox News cut away from the hearing.
Went against Donald Trump. Now, this, of course, was a part of Trump's first impeachment, if you remember. Trump trying to pressure Ukraine, specifically Zelensky, to announce that they'd be opening an investigation into Joe Biden to hurt him politically, into the very stuff that Lev Parnas, as you see on screen, was trying to find. Since then, Lev Parnas, who got to testify in front of this committee, he has been very clear that all these allegations against Joe Biden, conspiracy theories, Russian misinformation operations, nonsense, and he again describes himself as being sucked into the cult, and then, as you'll see in clips that I have here for you, will absolutely expose Trump, Sean Hannity, and many others Republicans for the dishonesty of their attacks against Joe Biden. So first, here's Fox News, not super comfortable with what Lev Parnas had to say, and so they cut away from him. Then I'll show you the part that they cut away from.
The impeachment proceedings that bring us here now are predicated on false information spread by the Kremlin. Everyone involved knew.
So this bit of a preview right now. This hearing is going to be hot, so stand by for more on that. I want to bring in Jesse Waters right now. He's been sitting patiently to our left, watching this as well.
Stand by for whenever the witness who's in prison or the other ridiculous witness starts talking. Then we'll show you the parts.
And he's right. So they just cut away to go to, let's not hear the rebuttal. Let's not hear the defense side. Let's just hear the prosecution. So let's shield our audience from the truth, kind of thing. It was pretty funny. But they cut away from that. But the whole thing was just kind of a joke. So let's skip into, so Lev Parnas though, kind of made this look really bad. And I have Ben Mysalis here from the Midas Touch, and he's going to pull out some clips of Lev Parnas. Lev Parnas pretty much hammers it home that this whole impeachment inquiry thing was fabricated from the get-go, and it was all under the instruction of Donald Trump through Rudy Giuliani, who he worked for. So this whole thing is just fabrication, and I think this is important because the Republicans have spent 15, 16 months doing these hearings. They've spent years now on this impeachment hearing, spending tens of millions and millions of dollars, I mean maybe $100 million of your taxpayer money, our taxpayer money, to do these hearings. You know what they're not doing? They didn't do the border thing. They let that drop because Trump didn't want it. They haven't passed really anything. They haven't done anything. This is the most inefficient, worthless Congress that as far as Congress is doing anything. They haven't done any. This is actually the least productive Congress in the history of this country. And that includes Congresses back in the freaking 1800s. So, I mean, this is bad. So, this is what they've been spending all their time on, and it's all horseshit that was trumped up by Donald Trump in the beginning. And Lev Parnas is going to say that because he worked for him.
Everybody know and reminded everybody. Remember, Lev knows what went down when Trump was in office and what he had asked Lev to do. Here, play this clip.
But lots of times.
Is there anything that you'd like to relate to us about your conversations with Donald Trump that would bear on the conduct of these proceedings?
I mean, Donald Trump was aware of everything that was going on that day in the Red Room when we were in the White House. After Rudy bringing Donald Trump up to speed on that I could go out to Ukraine and get Viktor Shokin, Donald Trump approached me, shook my hand, said, "Thank you for all that you're doing. Keep up the good work," patted me on the back, took pictures, and I was off to Ukraine.
To meet with Viktor Shokin?
To find Viktor Shokin, to bring him back here to meet with Lindsey Graham.
Got it. Thank you so much.
And throughout.
So, all that, met with Trump, sent him off to Ukraine to go find Viktor Shokin, which turned out to be a whole horse shit thing, to bring him back. So Lindsey Graham, Senator Lindsey Graham, who was in on this shit too. So all this, a fake impeachment hearing against nothing around Joe Biden. And the reason for it is, if you're wondering, is because Donald Trump, what now, adjudicated rapist, adjudicated fraudster, looking at over $500 million in fines. He's looking at, 91 criminal indictments and 91 criminal charges and 4 different indictments in 4 different places. I mean, he's going to be in trial for the next couple of years, unless he wins the presidency and somehow gets away with it. That's what's going to happen. And so Donald Trump is just covered in dirt. But Joe Biden's a pretty innocuous guy. I mean, there's not much going on with him, other than he's just a politician doing politician stuff. So they had to run on that. And so what did they do? They said, well, we're going to fabricate an impeachment and a criminal background and call them the Biden crime family and all that shit. That way they'll look better in comparison. It's basically the old whataboutism Russian shit, right? The KGB thing where you bring up one thing and they go, well, what about this, right? But it doesn't work in actual sense, right? I can't go to court and go, well, Your Honor, yeah, I robbed the bank, but what about John Dillinger? What about Bonnie and Clyde? I mean, I rest my case. I'm innocent. So, but that's essentially the game that they've been trying to play here. And it's a shell game. It's worked before. They worked on Hillary. It worked on a bit on Obama. So this is the game they're used to playing, and they're wasting your tax dollars to do it. And they're not legislating. They're not doing shit. But we'll move on. Here's Jamie Raskin talking to him. This whole thing was just a joke, but here's Lev Parnas digging more out to Jamie Raskin.
At what point did Mr. Giuliani begin working directly with Russian agents and Russian assets, individuals who would later become sanctioned by Donald Trump's own Treasury Department for spreading propaganda and disinformation against Joe Biden?
It was sometime in probably around May, June of 2019.
Were you aware, was Mr. Giuliani aware that these people were basically just doing the bidding of Vladimir Putin?
Absolutely.
So he had no hesitation about spreading lies that were concocted by Russian agents?
As long as it fit the narrative, absolutely not.
How were you and Giuliani able to take these false allegations peddled by corrupt officials and Russian agents and promote and amplify them here in the United States, in our political system? Weren't media groups skeptical of your claims?
Most media groups, I'd probably say all except for Fox and a few other right-wing media groups, didn't want to take any of the information, and that aggravated Rudy Giuliani and John Solomon and other players. And the main group that was being pushed through was Fox, Sean Hannity, and some other media personnel over there. But then there was also other people that were doing the bidding for the Russian people in Congress, like Senator Ron Johnson, like Congressman Pete Sessions that sits here right now, that was with me from the very beginning in this journey into finding up digging dirt on Joe Biden.
Then one of the...
So that's incredible. So they're talking about Biden being involved in a RICO thing. Here we go. Spreading misinformation to influence an election. So election interference, criminal election interference, using Russian intelligence. And I want to remind everybody, the Kremlin is not our ally. They're our enemy. They're at war with Ukraine, who's our ally right now, that they've invaded. they got intelligence from the Russians, from the FSB, formerly the KGB, from those guys, from Russian intelligence, from the Kremlin. Rudy Giuliani used it. Trump was aware of it. They spun that shit, tried to sell it here that Biden was in all this shit. Why? Because the Russians want Trump to be president again because they think he'll be better for them. Plus, you got to remember the Russians, the Iranians, and probably the Saudis and the Israelis to a degree don't really want to see America do well. It's in their best interest for us to not do well as a country. So, China too. Sorry, my bad. But China's another big one. But there is some interest there. So here he is going to the enemy to get information that's total horseshit, that's totally fabricated, to spin basically a counterintelligence dialogue in the U.S. None of the news agencies here picked it up except for like Fox News, OAN, America One or whatever they are. And of course, not only did the Fox and those people pick that up and spew that shit, and Sean Hannity he named, but there were Congress people that knew it was intel from the Russian, or bullshit intelligence from the Russian intelligence. They knew it was counterintelligence, and they still ran with it, like Ron Johnson and Jeff Sessions, or was it Pete Sessions? Sorry, Pete Sessions was in the room. So this was a whole big fucking conspiracy to trump up and make up an impeachment for Joe Biden, some criminal action that didn't occur. And why? Because they were so afraid of running Donald Trump against Joe Biden in the election, they had to dig up some dirt on Joe Biden because they couldn't make Trump look better, but they could try to make Biden look worse. And that's all this is about. So they've spent all these millions of dollars of our tax money, wasted time, done no legislation. Why? So they can stay in power. That's it. That's the whole story. But we'll keep going because the whole thing with Lev Parnas was just revelatory. It was amazing. So here's the next clip. This is where they ask about, okay, if Biden's so dirty and everything, let's talk to Jared Kushner and subpoena him because he was in the White House while all this shit was going on. So let's see what he knows. Plus, Jared Kushner took $2 billion of investment money from the Saudi Arabians to invest that portfolio of $2 billion. Jared Kushner's never worked in finance. He's never invested money before. He doesn't know how to do that. But the Saudis were more than happy to give him $2 billion to do it. So you can't say that's not a bribe. So let's interview him. So they ask for the subpoena. Watch what happens. This is amazing. Just amazing.
First member Lynch made sure that everybody knew, again, the MAGA Republicans first relied on a Russian asset who's incarcerated. They then have relied on a Chinese spy who was incarcerated, and now somebody who rips off people's pensions as their witness. Like, can you get lower than this? Play this clip.
We're reaching out to witnesses who have been convicted and sentenced to prison for stealing $80 million from the pensions of innocent workers. We can't get any lower at this point. That's your star witness. I want to remind people he's sitting in prison. That's why he can't be here today. He's sitting in prison for scamming workers' pensions. I mean, how low can you get? Then it's the Republicans' idea that this is the best guy they can get to testify against the president. This is the best guy they can get. A guy sitting in prison who can't even be here. Mr. Parnas,
And again, going back to how this is all connected.
Sorry, that was the wrong clip. He was just talking about how the witnesses were BS. Where did I put that? Let's see. Oh, right here. Sorry, guys. Sorry about that confusion.
MAGA Republicans' key witness, Jason Galanis, he was in jail. Like, the MAGA Republicans picked somebody who was like literally incarcerated for ripping off a pension fund. And Democratic Congress member Lynch made sure that everybody knew, again, the MAGA Republicans first relied on a Russian.
Going to clause 2K6 of Rule 11 that the committee issue a subpoena to Jared Kushner to compel testimony related to the $2 billion
Sorry, everybody. Here it is. Here's where Jamie Raskin asks about that.
collected from Saudi Arabia after his service within the White House.
Second.
There's a motion, and for what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio seek recognition?
Move to table the motion.
There's a motion the motion to table is not debatable. As many as are in favor of tabling signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion.
So, Jamie Raskin moves to, hey, let's subpoena Kushner and get him in here to testify in this because he was there. And it's, oh, well, we want to table the motion. Okay, we're not going to debate it. Can't debate it. No. We're not going to debate whether or not we should subpoena him. To table the motion, get rid of it, right? All right, so let's do the ayes have it? Let's do the ayes or the nays. All in favor, aye. And he's the only one who says aye. Just him. Nobody else says aye. How about the no's? And you hear like 4 or 5 Democrats. No! Well, by my opinion, the ayes have it. Which tells you it's just the perfect example of why this is all horseshit. And they're just wasting your time and money. So, at the end of this whole thing, I mean, just to wrap it up, this is the end of it. It's not going anywhere. It's dead. They basically wasted the better part of 2 years. And millions and millions and millions of taxpayer money just to do this. And it was all to try and help out Donald Trump in the election. And it doesn't really seem like it's done a whole lot. I mean, it's riled up his base, but those people weren't going to leave him anyway, so who cares? And at the end, I mean, they tried to drag Hunter Biden's name through the mud. Like, he needed a ton of help. I mean, he had a criminal past. He had drug problems and stuff. But he's clean now, so I don't know why it's such an issue now. And then basically to try and drag Joe Biden's name to the mud because they were hoping they could run on that in the election, but they've got nothing. So they've just wasted a ton of time. And kind of in the end of the whole thing, just to guess sort of hammer that last point home, here is, I always forget this guy's name. I forget his name. Sorry, but we're going to do it. He's another Democrat, but he actually asked the question to try and prove the point that this is all crap. Here we go.
The vote by now, right? But they want it to go on. They either want it to go on because they don't have the evidence.
Are you asking me a question?
No, I'm just looking at you.
Oh, okay.
But if you want to talk to me, we can talk.
Well, no, I think you haven't read recent data that shows the American people are well aware of the Biden's corruption.
Perfect. So then ask the chairman why he hasn't called for impeachment, Tony. He's right here. Ask Comer. Hey, Comer, how come you haven't called for impeachment? I'll do it. Watch. Hi, I'm Tony. Hey, chairman, how come you haven't called for impeachment? When are we going to have the hearing? When is the vote going to happen? I mean, you believe it. He believes it. He says it every day on TV. I just don't know when we're going to have the vote. I mean, let's just go.
Are you asking me to hold the vote?
No, I just like looking at you. Yeah. We can save the taxpayers millions of dollars. So, I mean, look, I used all of my time to show that this vote is never going to happen because they have no evidence on Joe Biden. I yield back.
And finally, as just a...
And he's right. And in fact, there's a point where he asked them to vote. And let's vote on it. And of course, and he's like, I'll even put the motion on the floor. I motion that we vote to impeach Joe Biden. He put it on the floor. Does anybody second it? Nobody seconded it. None of the Republicans. They could have seconded. Second. Let's do it. Let's vote to impeach him. And then let's take it to a hearing. Because they know if it goes to a hearing, it's going to prove that everything they said was bullshit. So the whole thing is just garbage. I mean, it's a waste of time and money. And you should be pissed. And it goes to show you this is what happens when you elect these guys. So, I mean, when you go to the polls, I mean, look, I'm not I wouldn't vote Republican. I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the Democrat stuff, but at least the Democrats do things. Because meanwhile, while all this was going on, Biden just introduced a new act as part of the CHIPS Act that's going to add 20,000 new jobs to the United States. And a lot of that's going to be for manufacturing and creating lithium, which is going to be a big part of what's going on in the future when it comes to powering our homes, powering our cars. It's going to be with lithium batteries. And the bottom line is this is a big deal because China is already way ahead of us on this. And a lot of Europe is way ahead of us in East Asia. And so we need to catch up quick. So this is an important thing. So that's what Democrats have been doing. They passed the CHIPS Act early in Biden's thing, and that's what they've been doing, is pushing through all that stuff. So, meanwhile, the Republicans are trying to manufacture an impeachment of the current president. Why? Because they're afraid he'll look too good next to the former president in the election. So, those are your choices. I hope you enjoyed all this. Catch us next time. I might stream a couple more today, but thanks for joining me.